afternoon. Thank you for my invitation. It's very good to have this kind of a study concerning this tourism sector. I have one remark. The first is
صراحة ان احنا لم يحدث للقطاع السياحي حد فلس وخد في مصر وكان مش من البلد. القطاع السياحي لم يحدث فيه
tourism sector never became bankrupt, and all the problems facing the tourism establishments are based on the challenges which we are facing in Egypt. I made marketing, and I invested, and I had agreement with the banks, and we used to provide the banks with 20 or 30 years, so they can facilitate, they can have agreements, settlement agreements with us, and they have reduced the benefits, and there must be some measures to be taken by the parliament, that the banks collaborate with the tourism establishments in order to improve our vehicles and our hotels, and to enjoy the economic inclusion. As for the performance, we don't have a standard performance. We need to have performance measurement in accordance with certain indexes, and it should be more subjective, and to have mechanisms in place to standardize the performance. The data. As for the data, it's a tragedy. I tried myself to extract data and information, and all these information should be transparent, and in order to work upon based upon such information, this information should be accessible for all of us in order to work for on a project for the government, for example. So there must be a device from which we can extract information and the data, so that we take good decisions. Also, the transportation means is very correlated with tourism sector, and should be studied, because the vehicles become obsolete, and we need to upgrade such a kind of vehicles. Also, people with disabilities. The only cruise ship which is oriented for people with disability is only one ship which I own. And also I have a problem concerning the marinas. The marinas is very trivial issue that can be solved. There are a lot of easy issues that to be fixed and upgraded.
سنة 2013 وبعد استشارة وزارة السياحة طلعنا لنسوق في إيران.
As for the marketing in Iran, and when we started to market in Iran, we were well received, as you know. We consulted the Ministry of Tourism, and it didn't object, but we faced objections from our intelligence, and although people were welcoming, but there were some political challenges and some intelligence challenges, and also the Gulf area have great relations with Iranian people, and so we couldn't market there because of such issues, as I said, the political and the intelligence issues.
Mahmoud Siyufi, journalist. My question has to do with the destiny of this road map. Would this be added to other previous road maps that are shelved now, or these are going to be implemented somehow? Mr. Ilhami said there is a difference between promotion and the marketing. Egypt pays $66 million for a public relations company to promote and brand for Egypt, and you objected to such campaigns. As for the third point, we care for certain markets. I'd like to say that the Russian market is one of the most important markets. So 75% of the Russian markets come through agents, and sometimes they need to borrow money before they leave. And Ms. Sahar said that we need to upgrade the pyramids area. Sometimes we don't have restrooms there. This is a shame. It's such a historical place, the most important touristic place all over the world, and there are no enough restrooms. All we need is 50 million Egyptian pounds to rehab the areas. Sometimes we spend this to renovate an office at a Foreign Affairs Ministry. Mr. Ilham said that there were exams for the selection, and those who passed these exams did not travel. People scoring 4 out of 10 in language exams traveled, and those who got 6 out of 10 did not travel. We are discussing, and I hope you will accept my questions. Egypt lacks nothing. Egypt is more secure than other countries. Egypt is is a very good destination. Other countries do not have floating hotels or cruise ships. We need to teach these concepts to everyone. People need to understand what tourism means. It's not about tourists taking photos and leaving. It's beyond this. It's a whole system that should be reviewed holistically. It has been 2 years now, and we couldn't hold the elections for the ETTA. And these are the most important thing in the tourism sector. We need this association. The same way we need the minister who's appointed by an administrative decree. So I hope that this roadmap would be presented or submitted somewhere and interacted with, instead of having this on the shelves. Because you are dedicated people, you exerted much effort, so this deserves to be implemented. Ashraf Ibrahim. I'd like to I am the training department head in the ETTA. I agree with what Mr. Ilhami and Mr. Haitham said on capacity building. Yes, this training stopped from March 2016 until March 2018. And from March the 5th, 2018, and based on a needs assessment from the hotel's chamber, we started 8 training courses. We have a training course in Hurghada, Sharm el Sheikh, and Cairo, and Mercure Giza. And as for the chef centers, yes, they stopped working and people did not get their salaries. But just yesterday, we started the training 29 people in Luxor and 19 on stewarding. It's very it's timely that this meeting is held while other developments are taking place. As for Mr. Haitham, you said that We need to reconsider the technical or the vocational training, and the ETTA is in partnership with the TVET 2 program, and one of the projects we have is to redesign the syllabuses for hospitality schools and universities. So professional people from the sector form technical and executive committees to design the syllabus and curricula, and any one is welcome to join these committees. We also work in TVET to train managers and teachers of hospitality and tourism institutes and colleges. We will start with 50 school. We will give these schools training starting in mid-April 2018, and you're all welcome to join this project. We want to take people. I thank you so much for the effort exerted. My name is Ahmed El Wasif, Wings company. The steering committee head in the touristic places management, and this is a very good road map. The vision is to be implemented by 2020, but in order to set strategy for tourism, we should have a longer term vision. As Ms. Sahar said, if I want to build a system for hunting or conference and exhibitions and meeting tourism, we need to work 2 years before the event. For example, we don't have a well-equipped meeting room or conference hall in Luxor. I'm sorry, some conferences hall exist, but their capacities are really limited. So for each destination, we should have a strategy, and accordingly, we start developing the infrastructure. We want the state itself to be working on such a strategy. Turkey have a similar strategy set from 2015 to 2032. And in this roadmap, each ministry has certain KPIs and certain requirements to be fulfilled. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Mohammed El Attan. I wish I have found shopping tourism in the lost opportunities. You mentioned Dubai. Turkey had 30 billion revenues for merchandise. I'm not talking about local crafts. We should have exporting councils involved here. I am part of the exporting council for handmade carpets. And we should also involve people working in garments. We should add value to tourists. We should have a system where tourists could get their VAT when they leave the country, as it happens elsewhere. Adel Zaki, I thank you so much for your excellent presentation. I'd like to refer to something that Ms. Sahar said. I was a part of the ETTA in the 90th session, where Mohammed Lahita prepared some school books after he agreed with the Minister of Education then. So we had ready-made books. So we're still speaking of the same issue since the 90s, and nothing happened till now. So another example. In 2011, session. I was also a member of the ETTA till 2011. And the term is usually 3 years, but because of the revolution, we worked for 4 years. I was part of the board of directors, and they asked me to be responsible for incoming tourism. Any board of directors, they also allocate most of their times in for religious tourism, like Hajj and Umrah. So 60% of the tourism come from incoming tourism, foreign tourists coming to visit Egypt. We used to convene, so 18 or 20 tourist business owners, we convene once a week, and the Minister of Tourism then asked us to work on different files and to get back to him. One of the issues discussed a while ago was the Giza Pyramids place. We failed because 17 different bodies are working on this. So we send these files for the ETA because it's the responsible body. We studied everything, the offshore offices, marketing, branding, and everything was shelved due to personal interests. Now we are starting to have a new system, and I shouldn't be working with a corrupted mechanism. So we need to restructure ETA, and we need to follow other countries where the private sector is responsible for everything. And Mr. Sultan wanted to start this, but he was not able to do so. I don't know who can take this step. Maybe the parliament should take this brave step. As for the airports, we need to get rid of this ETA if we want to be successful. When we discussed airports, all the ATMs at airports are not working. How can the tourists change their money? We need to educate people on tourism. A lady on Facebook from the Jews who left Egypt long time ago, and the Jewish community prepared an excellent program for her, and they wanted to visit one of the museums or the synagogue, and she wanted to pray, and one of the police officer told her to go pray outside. So this is very inappropriate. Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's my name is Riham Dusui from The Economist. I'm a private consultant. This is the first time to see targeted numbers per nationalities. Of course, there is a lack of data, and since you work on the legislative part, we need to get over the idea of confidentiality. We need these information to be available, maybe online through giving ID numbers for it. I have a suggestion or a comment. If someone wants to visit a place, he or she will check the rating maybe on TripAdvisor. So why don't we have a rating for services, not only for hotels, for private transportation means, for buses, for restaurants, for we don't have hop on, hop off. Maybe we can rent or lease high quality buses. So sometimes people are willing to pay, but the service is not even available. We need to rate the private drivers. As investors community, we go to meetings and we give the agenda to the driver, but then on the next day we lose much time because the drivers do not know the places they are supposed to pick people up from. So we need to train people, whether through TVAT or other channels, and also from the legislative part you need to work with Dr. Sahar. Some funding for the training to be able to rate every private service, so each hotel can find a list of rated hotels, rated restaurants, rated drivers, rated the use, and so on. And we don't have to start with full-fledged services. We can we can announce on newspapers that you can get a month long course on tourism, and you will get a certificate with an IELTS like rating system, like 7 point on certain areas which he was trained on. So Cairo, for example, is at peak in summer, but Red Sea is at peak in winter. So when it comes to training, we need to include that this person has to be scored this number in presentation skills and scored this number in driving, and so on. So I work with economic cadres.
And I would like not to be irrelevant to what you have been saying. I feel that the community is not aware of tourism, and I would like to present the point of view of the community concerning tourism and hotel sectors. I used to have some cooperation with the challenges we faced in Deir al-Bahari and Sharm el-Sheikh, but the community itself does not still have a conceived idea that that the government is supporting only the tourism, and when they have a drop based on external or internal circumstances, and when the people are encouraged to go to Luxor or Aswan, to Sharm el-Sheikh, they are ill-treated. And also, as for the prices, the night is sold for $10 or $15 in certain places, and the Egyptians feel that there are 4 categories of prices. For the Egyptians and for the foreigners. When the Egyptians go to Alexandria, they pay 100 or 300 pounds per night, and in comparison to the foreigners, they are sold for $10 or $15. Some of the Egyptian people prefer to spend their vacations in Egypt instead of traveling to Turkey or to other places, and they participate in something which we call Royal Club, and those clubs provide you with the opportunities to take timeshare or something. And when you go to the hotel and you receive your offer, you find out that this is not applicable during the peak season, and this happens in the resorts or the tourism villages. And I used to pay 500 pounds per year in order to have 1 or 2 rooms during the season. And when I went to the hotels, they told me that this does not apply during the peak season. And I told them that it is only the one occasion during summer that we can come, because we have some responsibilities during the rest of the year. This is what is the idea taken about tourism in Egypt. There was an initiative in which the people living in the area of the citadel, Salah ad-Din Citadel, when they were asked to clean up and to restore the place, and the impression of the community is that the tourism sector and the travel sector, when they are in their good days, they forget all about the Egyptians. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Reham. I work for the Ministry of Tourism. I would like to thank you for this great presentation and for the great interventions and the proposals which I'm going to communicate to the Ministry of Tourism. Talking about the training and the capacity building are very important to talk about, and in order to be also applied in our ministry to impact the service standards and to promote the human resources. We are working on a strategy for enhancing the human factors, and for it's going to be launched in 2020 to be published in April as well, in collaboration with the specialists from tourism sector. We work with the Ministry of Education. There is an implementation council to improve the vocational training, which was not activated during 2014 after the decree was issued from the cabinet, but the Minister of Education and some other ministries, such as the Ministry of Tourism, started to review the curriculum and to amend them in accordance with the needs of the tourism sector. Also, we are collaborating with international schools to come to train in Egypt. We also work on the strategy of 2030. Tourism doesn't have its independent pivot, and we are working now with the Ministry of Planning to have its own pivot. And there were a lot of discussions running with the Ministry of Planning and the other relevant ministries, such as the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Antiquities, and the Ministry of Culture, in order to prepare for the tourism pivot in our strategy 2030. And we are having other dialogues with all stakeholders in order to improve this sector. And as for the marketing, we are applying marketing strategy. We are developing a new study in order to enhance marketing. We are going not only to market Egypt as a whole, but we are going to market and brand certain cities like the Red Sea area, like Luxor, and we have collaboration with the Ministry of Antiquities. We have chosen the most mega projects to be inaugurated in 2018, and we are developing a new plan with them in order to make use of such projects like the inauguration of the Kibash route and other attraction places in order to be marketed abroad. We also work with the Ministry of Finance in order to apply the VAT and the tax linkage to be applied through the High Council of Tourism. And as for the external travel agencies, I used to be a member of such offices, and Mr. Elhami we used to have certain criteria in order for such offices to be evaluated. We used to send the reports monthly on what are the articles, what are the negativities and the positive factors, the marketing activities, the proposals were sent during through these reports. Thank you. Good morning. I am Mohamed Osman from Luxor. Actually, it happened that during the past era we had cultural and recreational tourism. Cultural tourism represented in tourism businesses. In fact, feel that the recreational tourism is better than them, but the cultural tourism is the recreational tourism is supported more by the government rather than the cultural tourism. The support of the recreational tourism is 17 million and the cultural is only 4. And I can say that the cultural tourism participated with a great deal of the revenue for the state, more than that of the recreational. And I can say that we have reached 15%, but after the increase of the entry fees and all the increases that we had in the prices, we had meetings with the Minister of Antiquities, and let's say that the cultural tourism was suffered from injustice in comparison to recreational tourism. We cannot say that we can market Egypt as Egypt as a whole. Egypt is 5 destinations. Sharm is 1 destination. Cairo is 1 destination. North Coast is 1 destination. Luxor and Aswan are also a destination. There must be brands, and cultural tourism must be well represented on all levels of the state. Some good professors participate in this sector, but in most cases they choose for their investments the recreational tourism, not the cultural one. As an evidence for this, all people are attending here in the room, let's ask them how many cruise ships do we have in the Nile. We do not have any hope for marketing. People say 68 cruise ships, some others say 38 or 83. And we don't have clear cut data concerning the number of ships in the Nile. We have less than 60 cruise ships workable in the Nile. Quickly, the island policies. You are talking about 3 relevant ministries: tourism, antiquities, and aviation. I have a disaster. I have a train which used to transport a great number of tourists to Luxor and Aswan. It used to have 40% of the tourists going to Luxor. Where is the Minister of Transportation in such regard? Also, the ships are suffering from certain challenges because we are having a conflict between the Ministry of Irrigation, which owns the water surface, the Ministry of Agriculture owns the banks, and the Ministry of Transportation is responsible for the digging and for clearing the water surface. And when we started to talk with them, they asked us how many cruise ships do you have? We don't have any data concerning this. So we are talking about separate or isolated island policies here. How can I inaugurate a number of cemeteries and then I close them, open them and try give us the chance to work with them? I have more than 14 cemeteries inaugurated or opened during 2017 and then closed. Please be aware that the cultural tourism is the core tourism in Egypt, and all the investments were built upon the tourism, the cultural tourism in Luxor and Aswan, and the problem of tourism transportation was solved during 2010, and there is a fact that everyone knows about. The Japanese tourist is very important. The Chinese tourists, the Chinese stopped the overland tourism because of the bad accommodation of toilets or WCs. In Luxor and Aswan, we take the tourists to the in-home, the domestic WCs, and you have very great lost opportunities which cannot be regained because of the lack of the infrastructure and the data. Good morning. I am Tawfiq Mukhtar. I am the manager of Carlton Hotel. Thank you for the invitation. I am very optimistic about what is happening. We are having a starting point. Of course, we have hit the bottom, but we are going to go to the top. I was about to tell you an idea concerning the Deputy Prime Minister, and I was trying to propose that during the Mr. Fuad Sultan, we used to have a Minister of Aviation and a Minister of Tourism, and everything was going well at the time. But during Ramadan and the Fitr feast, we don't have flights to bring tourists from the Gulf area. There is no collaboration between the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Aviation. One thing we have to add to the job description of the Deputy Prime Minister is to have a tourism police and those who are working with the tourists. Those people should be supported, and we should provide them with the mechanisms and the methods of how to deal with tourists. Sometimes an officer does not know how to deal with a tourist, and he then damages our image before the world. We have hotels which are very expensive, and we bring workforce from casual people, not from graduates of the Faculty of Tourism or something. So we tried to find, as graduate from the Faculty of Tourism, we tried to find people to introduce us to such hotels. We don't have any interviews during the 90s, and people were appointed in accordance with the score they received from their faculties. We need that education and the tourism to be followed by the Deputy Prime Minister, and they must have credit hours in order to be trained within the hotels. It's very unacceptable to find that we don't have good students to be trained. Those people who are studying in the faculties of tourism should be trained within hotels. We spent about 30 years in burning all our markets, and I don't find any people to market abroad, and we are relying on our own favoritism, and even the travel agencies which are applying such a kind of methodology should be striked from the records. I have a remark. Do we have a place in Egypt that you can go, you and your family, without being annoyed or intimidated by other people? Those tourists coming to Egypt should not be intimidated by people. They should feel secure. Even when we go to African countries, we feel secured. Why don't we have a role model area like Garden City or downtown or the Khedivi Cairo to be a secure place for the tourists to go around without being intimidated or annoyed by the vendors or the microbuses and so on. Thank you.
As for the involvement of tourism in TVET, I just answer what the member of the parliament said, which has to do with the complementarity of the different ministries working together. Where is the Supreme Council for Tourism? In this council, all the relevant ministries should be represented, and they are anyway supervised by the president. As for the 15 million euros you mentioned, this is what Mr. Ashraf said on the development of technical education. This is the only remark I have. Before giving you the answer to reply, I'll use my right as the moderator and start. The most important question asked was the next step for this road map and a longer term vision. Please be aware that this is a think tank. This is not part of the government. We exert effort and then we communicate this to the government. I'm wearing different hats. Whatever is done here will be communicated to the Prime Minister, to the President, and to the relevant ministries or authorities. But at the end of the day, implementation goes to the executive structure. It's not part of my job. As for the longer term vision, of course, this is the responsibility for the state. So what we are trying to do is to exert effort in an ever-changing and a very dynamic sector. This is what we're trying to do, and we stand ready to collaborate with the parliament, with the Ministry of Tourism to help them. The second point has to do with the training. You said we always say that we start the training. Yes, but we should have a time frame that within a certain period of time we will finish this and that, and even key performance indicators should be time bound. We don't have this culture, and this applies to all the sectors, not only the tourism culture. When we say that people do not treat tourists well, please remember that this is a poor country. It's a very poor country. Street children go and run after tourists because they want to beg, they want to get money. So I want to get rid of this poverty, and I want to achieve social justice to avoid this. And this should be added to the education, and this is the core of the matter. Also, different points were said about the deputy prime minister responsible for the three ministers, and I don't want to involve all the ministries because this brings us back to the cabinet, and the Supreme Council of Tourism should clarify and assign responsibilities. We want to have a deputy prime minister coordinating between these three ministers working together, because the responsibilities always overlap. But of course, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Irrigation, Ministry of Finance, even the Central Bank, they're all linked, of course. What we all talked about is has to do with institutional reform and coordination between the relevant ministers. We should adopt this approach, and this is one of the ongoing recommendations of the president. We finished the Suez Canal project in 1 year, and we want to reform our institutions in 1 year. The parliament should exert pressure to achieve this. And it's not a priority. We should exert pressure for this to be on the top of the priorities. We need to close the circles. If you want to rehab the entrance, you would still have the back word. So we need to close the circle. We need to work on the system as a whole to effect a change. Also, some of the things said about the shopping tourism. Of course, in the competitiveness observatory, we have more details. And there are a number of different terms used. But of course, it's an important part. Of course, through the tourist, I can brand my own local juice. Maybe when they go back home and they see these local juices, they get it. So of course, if this is well exploited, then we could have done much more. Last, as for the hunting tourism, we knew a lot about the activities, like €2 per bird. We need this activity to be added to the different tourism plans. I issue newsletter and I follow up on the developments of the Grand Museum, and the recent newsletter read that due to our efforts, we had 90 female members in the parliament, and the head of the tourism committee is a female. We have 6 female ministers, and I had their pictures. And then we said at the end of the day, we want to empower men, not women. And of course, you will see the difference in performance. I will reply very briefly. The selection of people traveling abroad is the part of the committee. We have a general knowledge test and language test. But the final selection is the minister's job. Breaking news. A Russian airport enlists many flights flying from Russia to Egypt starting from March 18th. It's such good news. So we had 2 Rehams. One traveled to Paris and the other traveled to Brussels, and they exerted much effort, and then Reham came back. And the other one left, and the Paris office was about to be closed after New York office. And then the activity will be assigned to someone working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but we could send another colleague there. Yes, you need to select well. But if the person is not doing the job, you need to punish the job and not the whole office. Some people discussed sales and marketing. $66 million in 3 years. In 1992, when we started, the promotion and the marketing system, we started with 43 million US dollars in 1 year.
نقدرش نعمل بس على العموم طب دقيقة واحدة بس عشان
I'm sorry, a point of order. Okay, this is highly technical and I will answer you, but some questions can be answered through me, others cannot. And if you want to do what you are proposing, would be a waste of money.
مش سن انا اصغر من كده. ايوه ايوه ولا فانا بقول لك ان مرتبط المنظور
So when we first started,
40
we started with 43 million dollars in 1992, 1993, and then I heard that it reached 60 and 63 million. And I'm surprised how can these people accept this number, 20 million only. If you allow me, I'd like to comment briefly because we want to maintain our credibility and honesty. I have to be honest with myself. I was one of the people in the committee choosing the company doing the marketing for Egypt, and we worked on this. 7 companies proposed, and we had a book for specifications, standards, and criteria approved by the governmental bodies, and they form a technical committee. The company presented the best offer among the 7 companies. And I want to remind you, JWT started this successful campaign before 2011, and they came up with the Egypt where it all begins, the current logo. And JWT also was the reason for the success of the Egyptian Economic Forum after the election of the president. Please allow me some time. The problem here lies in the management of the company. When the company came and enumerated the things it wants to do over the 3 years. The first thing after the company selection is that they wanted to stop the budget, so they stopped for a year. And then there was a minister reshuffle. A different minister came, and it dealt differently with a different committee. So one of the recommendations or suggestions is to have a fixed system to be able to work scientifically. So we need to develop our methodology, and it's a work in progress to be developed as we go, and I had to clarify this point.
اللي بعديه اشرف انا مبسوط انك معاك انا سعيد باللي انت قلته
I'm so pleased with what you have said because this gives me a hope. Starting from March, we got to understand the importance of training. This is a very good point to be relied upon in order to provide us with a hope for the future. As for the conference tourism, as I told you, I am not envying people who are working in exhibitions. We started to attract foreigners through our exhibitions, like the computer exhibition and the other exhibitions, which started 20 to 25 years ago. This is a kind of tourism. Most of the German tourists go to visit exhibitions. Barcelona, for example, as well. And when they established the Olympic Village, they established the hotels after the Olympics. And they started to invest in such hotels, and the other cities started to develop as well. the new museum promotion is a duty on all of us, and most of you might not have seen the new museum, and what is done there is a great job. The restoration of the monuments are very great by using the stones, the costumes, or the shields. When you see such things and how they were like and how they are restored now, you are going to be very proud. And I asked them to make the ticket for the foreigners is to be $200 in order to generate more income. The strategy is very important, and here we have to put in our consideration that that we do not only have Hurghada and Sharm, but people who are coming to Luxor and Aswan are spending 5 times more than those who go to Hurghada and Sharm. I'm talking about the simple tourists, those who comes also from Northern America are spending more. But we always take care of those who have the louder voices. When the governor asks for something, he is promised that this something to be achieved, but nothing is done on the ground. When we inaugurate museums and explorated cemeteries. This is something I've talked about with Egyptian Tourism Authority, and I'm going to assign people by names. They told me, no, we don't need articles in the newspapers or tourism journals. This is something unworkable. I need the general newspapers to talk about the developments in Egypt, and I talked with them a lot, and the French chamber rescued us eventually. And the representatives of the Figaro and the Le Monde were even accommodated in one room, and I objected to this, and they accommodated them in Mercure Hotel in Ismailia, although they have the military hotel there, which is better. And then they accommodated them in El Muntaza, although they were to travel to see other places which are very remote from Alexandria. So I started to write the report all over again, and I was very annoyed about these measures. I am saying that we have to host the newspaper which is targeted by tourists. And we have hosted a lot of such newspapers, as you know. The High Council for Tourism is not a target or an object in itself. And I have to say something very important here. The High Council for Tourism, when concluded, there must be a number of ministers represented, those who have conflicts amongst themselves, and to find out solutions for their conflicts, because we can't present everything to the President of the Republic, because it is not that have the luxury to hear about all the problems. We all have learned that when we go to our superiors, we have to present the issue briefly in order to be dealt with our superiors. We have to respect the time of our superiors, and people might say that 7 people must be represented in the High Council for Tourism just to be represented, not to work or to participate in finding solutions. In Luxor and Aswan, we never complained about the visa price, and the Sharm and Hurghada cities or people responsible for such a city say that we have to eliminate the visa for entry of such cities, and this is reasonable. Of course, we have to develop studies and surveys on our airports, and I will tell you how we can develop such a survey with the Ministry of Aviation in order to have landing and parking mechanisms and prices. And I am aware of all these things, and because I have provided them with inventory concerning these prices, we are not richer than other cities. We have to apply such prices because we are not richer than other cities. Also, there were certain questions concerning Russian tourism, which pay money, and the local tourism, those who travel to stay in hotels in Egypt. In brief, if you go through the study we have developed here, it's going to answer all the questions that you have posed, because basically all these questions we suffered from. So through the performance follow-up and the implementation of a well marketing plan, everything is going to be appropriate. We cannot disregard tourists on the expenses of other tourists. Because people, the Egyptian people, risk tourism during our fall. So if we go through the study, you will find that it is all inclusive, related concerning with the shopping destinations, the products, the marketing of different destinations within Egypt. What are the factors which distinguish each city from the others, and so on. And as we said in the beginning, we have to upgrade these data as we go in accordance with the competitive markets in order to be competitive as well. I'll give you just a brief. I'll try a little bit to assure you that we make field visits and hearing sessions to listen from people working in the tourism sector. I would like to answer to the comment concerning the cemeteries which we inaugurate and then we close. Yes, we attended these explorations. I would like that the inauguration should be attended by the international press and the media. Yes, I know we used to do this, but this happens through coordination, because this is not only the responsibility of the Ministry of Tourism, but the responsibility of the media. For example, if I'm having a tourism agenda, or I have a day in Luxor which is celebrated, and all these things, I have to promote for these things. I have 400 cemeteries which are available for visits. Now we have something which we call Luxor Bus. You have the right to buy as a travel agent to buy, but the idea is that I can inaugurate the cemeteries, but declaration or publishing about such a thing is very important for people abroad. And if you see how correspondents, when they come in such inaugurations, they are very well representing correspondence, and even people abroad are very interested even in exploring a stone, for example. And I'm one of the most fan fan of Luxor, and I am requesting that it would be a separate destination. And as far as I know, there is a future vision concerning having Luxor as a separate destination for conferences and so on. As for the WCs and the toilets and the development of the pyramids area, we are working a lot on such area, and we are about to finish the work. And as Mr. Ilhami says, you have all to go to what is been done there, is being done there. Now we are requiring that people start to take care of bathrooms and WCs. I attended an event in Minya. I went from Cairo to Minya, and we had only one rest in a petrol station. We had ambassadors with us, and one of them asked for a Nescafe. And they looked very strangely at him because the only available drinks there was tea and juice. So we have a lot of problems concerning the attraction places. So we lack organization. That's why we are suffering from all these problems. There is something I would like to adopt, and all the sector adopt, that we have the poverty issue. Why don't I try to have projects, handicraft projects, developmental projects around the archaeological places and attraction places to sell the products, because we now we are when we try to buy some souvenirs from such places, we find that they are made in China, and we have a decree from the Minister of Industry to ban importing such kind of handicrafts in order to promote the Egyptian products. And the Egyptian people surrounding the area of these archaeological places are to be keen on doing this. Thank you very much, and we are sorry to prolong on you. I promise as a ECES, because we are the ones who developed this study, and no one has ever paid us for anything, even the publishing of this study, not even the tourism sector. And I think they are very pleased about this. It's a promise that this roadmap is not going to be stopped at this point. It is going to be applied. The parliament, the government are going to be responsible for promoting this roadmap and to market all the items they're in. Even the European Union was not composed only because the people find that they have interest in composing or constituting this union. And I promise you that every 3 months we hold a similar seminar in order to follow up what we have achieved. And we hope you, Nadia Nashar, all the success. The governmental sector was invited. Dr. Rania was coming from abroad, and that's why we have a representative from the Ministry of Tourism. There is no question that we should have all stakeholders attending in the seminar, but we have a lot of people who have excused themselves because of they are overloaded with work during this time. So it's your role now. Are going to support you technically as much as we can by research and by studies on the ground in order to provide you with the mechanisms in order to progress. Thank you very much.